Welcome back, church. I hope you are having a wonderful Holy Week so far. Here is today's Bible story. It is called The Servant King, and it is one story closer to the end of this week. One story closer to what Jesus did on Easter. We're moving forward in that direction. And this story blows me away. So this story comes from Mark 14 and John 13 through 14. Pay attention to what Jesus does in this story. It was Passover, the time when God's people remembered how God had rescued them from being slaves in Egypt. Every year they killed a lamb and ate it. The lamb died instead of us, they said. But this Passover was different. This Passover, God was getting ready for an even greater rescue. Jesus and his friends were having the Passover meal together in an upstairs room. But Jesus' friends were arguing. What about? They were arguing about stinky feet. Stinky feet! Yep, that's right. Stink feet. Now, the thing about feet back then was that people didn't wear shoes. They wore sandals, which might not sound unusual, except that the streets in those days were dirty. And I don't mean just dirty. I mean like real stanky dirty, with all those cows and horses and everywhere. Can you imagine the stuff on the street that ended up on their feet? Gross. So anyway, someone had to wash away that dirt. But it was a dreadful job. Who on earth would ever dream of volunteering to do it? Only the lowliest servant for sure. I'm not the servant, Peter said. Nor I, said Matthew. Quietly, Jesus got up from the table, took off his robe, picked up a basin of water, knelt down, and began washing his friends' feet. You can't, Peter said. He didn't understand about Jesus being not only the king, but the servant king. If you don't let me wash away the dirt, Peter, Jesus said, you can't be close to me. Jesus knew that what people needed most of all was to be clean on the inside. All the dirt on their feet was nothing compared to the sin inside their hearts. Then wash me, Lord, Peter said, tears filling his eyes. Wash all of me. One by one, Jesus washed everyone's feet. I am doing this because I love you, Jesus explained. Do this for each other. Now, one of Jesus' friends had made a bad plan. No one else knew what that bad plan was, but Jesus knew. And so did Judas. Judas was going to help the important leaders from yesterday's story capture Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Go on, Judas, Jesus said. And Judas got up from the meal, left the room, and walked out into the night. Then Jesus picked up some bread and broke it. He gave it to his friends. He picked up a cup of wine and thanked God for it, and he poured it and shared it with everyone. My body is like this bread. It will break, Jesus told them. This cup of wine is like my blood. It will pour out. But this is how God will rescue the whole world. My life will break and God's broken world will be mended. My heart will tear apart and your hearts will heal. Just as the Passover lamb died, so now I will die instead of you. My blood will wash away the sins of this world, and you'll be clean on the inside, in your hearts. So wherever you eat and drink, remember, Jesus said, I have rescued you. Jesus knew it was nearly time for him to leave the world and go back to God. I won't be with you for long, he said. You are going to be very sad. But God's helper will come. He said, I will send the helper to you. And then you'll be filled up with a forever happiness that won't ever leave. So don't be afraid. You are my friends, and I love you. Then they sang their favorite song and walked up to their favorite place, an olive garden. And that takes us right into tomorrow's Bible story. Now, there were two parts to that story. In the first part, Jesus did for his disciples what the sinful woman did for him in yesterday's Bible story. It's incredible. He is the highest and the greatest, but he humbled himself to be a servant for us. He got down on his knees and he washed the disciples' feet. Why was he doing that? He said, I want you guys to do this for other people. Jesus lived as an example for us. Things he did are things we should do. Jesus was tremendously humble. He loved other people, even though, let's be honest, people are beneath Jesus. He humbled himself to serve us. So in the same way, we ought to be humble and serve other people. We should never think, I'm better than them. Ugh, they're beneath me. Because in God's eyes, we are all equal. And we should follow Jesus' example by humbly serving other people. And then in the second part of the story is called the Last Supper. And that is tremendously significant. If you don't know about the Last Supper, kids, ask your parents. Parents, ask your pastors. Pastors, get in your Bible and ask God, I guess. Jesus took the bread and took the wine. And those elements represented himself. He broke that bread and passed it around, and everyone ate from the bread. And then he poured the wine and passed it around. Everyone drank from the wine. And he said, my body will be broken just like this bread is broken, and my blood will pour out just like this cup is pouring out. He was telling us what was about to happen very soon for the first time. We, as modern day Christians, still do the Last Supper. We take communion at church. We take bread, we break the bread, we take a little bit of drink, and we drink that. When we do that, we reflect upon Jesus' Easter sacrifice and his action and his power. That was what Jesus was doing. He was setting up the pattern for us to follow. All these years later, we do the same thing Jesus did on that first night, again and again and again, because it reminds us of Holy Week, and it tells us about Jesus' love.